Jerusalem, city of faith and fury.
Sundays at 10, only on CNN.
Welcome to our viewers in the United States and all around the world. This is Early Start. I'm Laura Jarrett.
And I'm Julia Chatterley in for Christine Romans. It's Thursday, July 22nd, and it's 5 a.m. in New York.
This morning, for the first time in his presidency, Joe Biden faces a pandemic that is headed in the wrong direction. The Delta variant, now the dominant strain in the United States, and sources tell CNN top White House and federal health officials are now holding preliminary talks about possibly urging vaccinated Americans to go back to wearing masks. COVID was a major topic at CNN's presidential town hall last night.
This is a simple, basic proposition. If you're vaccinated, you're not going to be hospitalized, you're not going to be in an ICU unit, and you're not going to die. So it's gigantically important that we all act like Americans that care about our fellow Americans. We're not in a position where we think that any virus, including the Delta virus, which is much more transmissible and more deadly in terms of unvaccinated people, the various shots that people are getting now cover that. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Okay, so that last part's actually incorrect. A small percentage of vaccinated people are still being infected with COVID, although they're far less likely to die from it. But the need to stop these so-called breakthrough cases is just one of the reasons to keep an eye on vaccine advisors to the CDC. Now, they're meeting today to review whether booster shots will be needed.
Last night, the president also sounded the alarm on misinformation when it comes to these vaccines. He said the conspiracy theories flourishing in the U.S. are not just dividing the nation, they're hurting America's reputation around the world.
The rest of the world's wondering about us. Those of you who travel abroad, not a joke. Not a joke. You asked, when I went to this G7, all the major democracies, I walked in, and I know a lot of them because of my role in the past. And they walk in, and I said, America's back. And they go, I'm serious, heads of state. I give you my word as a Biden. I said, are you really back? I mean, how can we believe you, Joe, but will the country ever get it together?
Let's bring in New York Times White House and national security correspondent David Sanger, who's also a CNN analyst. David, good morning to you. You heard the president last night. He says America is back, but other world leaders ask him, will the country ever get it together? How does he make a convincing case to other world leaders when a non-insubstantial number of Republicans actually think that he wasn't even legitimately elected president? Half of the country is overwhelmed by all this misinformation and refusing to get vaccinated, even to save their own lives. Meanwhile, voting rights are slowly being chipped away for future election. How does he sell that case?
It's a hard one, and I was on that trip that the president took through Europe, and we were talking to him and to White House aides along the way. But there are two forms of skepticism that I think he ran into. The first is, how do we know that you're not a blip? In other words, they're very happy to see Joe Biden there. They know him. They understand who he is. But they think that it's possible that when we look back in history, his presidency will be sandwiched between President Trump and something that may be Trump-like that succeeds him. But the second issue that comes up is exactly the one that he raised, which is they see an American democracy they don't really recognize. They see one in which conspiracy theory takes off, not just that there are conspiracy theories, there always have been, but that a big part of the population believes in it, whether that's the election or whether it's about the vaccines. And I think that was at the core of his, there are two Americas that he did last night, an unvaccinated America and a vaccinated America. And I think people look at that around the world and they shake their heads as well.
Yeah. And David, some leaders, some adversaries of the United States around the world are looking at America and they're using that. And President Biden touched on that yesterday too. He said, look at China's Xi Jinping, Russia's Vladimir Putin. They're banking on a future not of democracy, but autocracy. Just let me play what he said about that.
I talked to Xi Jinping in China, who I know well. We don't agree on a lot of things. He's a bright and really tough guy. He truly believes that the 21st century will be determined by oligarchs. I had a long meeting with Putin, and I continued. I know him well. These guys actually are betting, I'm not joking, on autocracies. Democracy has to stand up and demonstrate he can get something done.
David, what do you make of the point that he was making there? I mean, China in particular has proven that at times, particularly with the pandemic, control can have a difference and a positive impact.
That's exactly right. And, this is a theme that President Biden has struck many times in the first 6 months of his presidency. And frankly, it's been a bit of a surprise because it's not the way he talked when he was vice president. It's not the way he talked when he was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Instead, he has described what is essentially the sort of makings of a new Cold War, one in which he's pitting the United States against the autocracy. And that's a very big difference. He is making the case that we have to prove that democracies can deliver and that all the chaos around the vaccine, around the election conspiracy theories, make it hard to convince people that a democracy can deliver. I think he believes this very much in his heart. I'm not sure whether going toe-to-toe with Russia and China simultaneously is necessarily the best approach, but he may not have a choice right now.
David, you obviously cover national security for the Times. The attack on the Capitol came up last night. He spent a lot of time on COVID, but this was also a big point. Take a listen to what he said on that.
I don't care if you think I'm Satan reincarnated. The fact is, you can't look at that television and say, nothing happened on the 6th. You can't listen to people who say this was a peaceful march.
David, how does the president continue to hold on to sort of this hope of bipartisanship, this ideal, and not look out of touch when so many Republicans are pushing all these false narratives about what was clearly a deadly attack, calling it just a normal tourist visit?
It was a fascinating time for him to make this case because, of course, we just went through the drama yesterday of Nancy Pelosi rejecting 2 of the 6 Republican nominees for this look at what happened on January 6th, and the Republicans pulling out. So I think when people look at this around the world, they think, well, America's in denial about what really went on. I was up on Capitol Hill yesterday talking to a number of members. They tell me that in the private conversations, it's a little bit better than that, that you are hearing a little bit more reality, but you've got a lot of Republicans who fear that they cannot go against the leadership and get away from this narrative that, January 6th wasn't all that big a deal. And I think that's why they fear this investigation so much, because it's going to dredge up all of those examples and will have subpoena power along the way. I don't think this is a breach that's going to be healed anytime soon, certainly not before the 2022 election.
Yeah, it's still unclear to me why they make that political calculation, much less the moral calculation, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah, it's not exactly profiles of courage.
No, not at all. All right, David Sanger, thank you so much. Appreciate you getting up early for us.
Great to be with you.
Okay, the economy also a hot topic. Restaurant owners are struggling to find workers as customer demand increases. President Biden addressed the labor shortage too during the town hall.
A lot of people who worked as waiters and waitresses decided that they don't want to do that anymore because there's other opportunities at higher wages, because there's a lot of openings now in jobs. People are looking to make more money and to bargain. And so I think your business and the tourist business is really going to be in a bind for a little while.
Restaurant workers are quitting their jobs at twice the rate of any other sector. The so-called quit rate for the food services sector was 5.7% in May. But being retrained for jobs with higher wages isn't the only reason restaurant workers are walking away from the industry. There, of course, are health and safety concerns too. Many are working longer hours because restaurants are short-staffed. And there are still childcare challenges keeping many people, especially women, at home.
Did you find it interesting how he sort of pushed back against this sort of conventional narrative that people aren't going to work because they're collecting this paycheck in all of these benefits, even though those benefits are largely expiring very soon? Did you think it was surprising how he sort of pushed back on that?
I think it was good that he acknowledged that people may have come and had a reality check throughout this period and thought, actually, I want to do a different job. But he also did acknowledge that that may have played into it, and actually these things are rolling off, and obviously we've seen that happen in many states. So I think he found a good balance on the economy, actually.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. You know, a lot of people point to anecdotal reports about that, but there isn't actually concrete evidence to prove it, and clearly he's tapped into that.
Yeah, time to retrain, and there is that going on.
Yeah. All right, still ahead. The Olympics are 24 hours away. We're here, folks. The opening ceremony dealt its second big blow this week. We are live in Tokyo next.